Okay. So yeah, thank you, Ben, for being here.
Thanks, Nadia. So let me see. I don't have a presentation to share. I just thought maybe it'd be a good opportunity to just have a conversation about this issue that we've begun following over the last few months. I do see, I mean, just out of respect, I want to acknowledge Pat McElroy is also on the call and representing the project proponent. So I'm sure that Pat may have some things he wants to say on this issue as well. But so the Montecito Emergency Debris Flow Mitigation Project. I think most people know the project it's the ring nets in Montecito. So just, I guess, to cut to the chase, our organization, so Los Padres Forest Watch, we were joined just a couple of weeks ago by several local organizations in submitting a letter to local and state and federal agencies conveying that we believe that they should allow the existing permits for this project to expire and allow the project to come to a conclusion. So just to go back a little bit for anyone who's not familiar, obviously, at the end of 2017, the Thomas Fire came through our community. And then very shortly after, in January 2018, the Montecito debris flow happened. And tragically, I think a couple dozen lives were lost and a few hundred homes were destroyed or damaged. And in response to that tragedy, some local members of that community formed an organization. I think they're Partners for Resilient Communities. Is that right, Pat? And they acquired permits from local, state, federal agencies to install a network of these steel ringed nets across 6 creeks in Montecito. And the idea was to achieve some layer of additional protection for downstream residents until, eventually the slopes were revegetated and the risk of debris flows was minimized. And so that work was completed, I believe, by the end of 2019. All that work was completed. The project was originally pitched as a temporary emergency project that would last for 1 year, at which point the nets would be removed. All the permits that were originally granted sort of documented that timeline. The project was extended around 2019, 2020, eventually to generally a 5-year project. I believe the Santa Barbara County zoning clearances expire at the end of this year, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife permits, they extend a little bit further into 2024 for several of the nets. But the project, it's currently slated to come to a conclusion by the end of this year or next. The reason that we're concerned, the project did face some skepticism and some level of opposition at the beginning. I think, I was there and I actually went up. I took a tour with Pat at the time, and the things are several feet off the ground, so wildlife can move up and down the creek corridor. The issue was always concern about what happens when they actually do fill up. So the nets are in very remote locations. They're not accessible by road. So the only way to install them was by helicoptering in heavy equipment and securing them to the stream banks. And so it begged the question at the time, what do you do when imagine this thing's 20, 25 feet tall, when it fills up with rocks, giant boulders, how are you going to clean it up? And, the plan, I think, all along was to helicopter in some kind of excavator and redistribute that material. I think a lot of groups, individuals have been skeptical about how that would actually play out, how feasible that would be. This last January, we had several big storms, and after one of the first major kind of rain events, the creek on the net, there's 2 on San Ysidro Creek. The upper one, which is a couple miles up the trailhead, So it's pretty far up into the forest. It filled up with vegetation that trapped sediment and debris. And from the surface, it looks like most of that is like gravel size, cobbles, small boulders. But the thing's entirely filled up to the top. So currently the San Ysidro Creek has like a 25 foot dam that's blocking, creeks are migration corridors. We talk about steelhead a lot, of course, because they're endangered species, but for all wildlife, right? Creeks are really important wildlife corridors. And just in this day and age, it's very unusual that we're installing new barriers in creeks. We've invested millions of dollars over the last couple of decades, removing barriers. And the project permits require that the nets be maintained and cleaned up within days, provided that its conditions are safe. And for various reasons, that the cleanup has been delayed due to various complications. And currently, my understanding is Department of Fish and Wildlife is actually holding off on the cleanup because it's bird nesting season, and maybe there are other factors too. But in any case, it's our opinion, it's our perspective that clearly, this rapid maintenance that the project was permitted, under those conditions, that it's just not feasible to maintain the nets the way that they were intended due to their remote location and due to a number of other factors. So because now we're not concerned, and we're not looking to jam up, Pat and his organization. We have confidence that they're going to clean up San Ysidro Creek and restore that corridor. That's the intention here, isn't really to point fingers, but we do want to start having conversations in the community about what the long-term role of the nets is. And again, so that project, it was originally sold as a temporary emergency project. We're coming on 5 years. The terms are expiring, and I think, what took place this last winter sort of is a demonstration that, maybe these structures aren't things that are really feasible to maintain for the long term. Maybe we shouldn't leave them in place. What if all 6 of them had filled up? Can you imagine the mess that we'd be in if more of them actually had? I think there is a question now about the slopes. The mountainsides are revegetated. Millions and millions of cubic yards of debris swept through that town back in 2019. And the capacity of these nets, though they seem big, there are questions about how significant they really are in terms of providing like an incremental additional amount of safety. Personally, and this is just my personal opinion, I worry that they give people a false sense of security, and maybe people will even stay in place. The only thing that could stop that, the only thing that can save people's lives when that kind of force of nature happens is to get people out of the way. And I do worry that we've got these nets in place, and people may feel like, well, the nets are there, it's safe. And I imagine when that thing filled up with vegetation, it filled up so rapidly, big boulders are still coming down. If we do have another debris flow, I'm not confident these things are really going to be what we want to rely on. And then maybe more also to the point is just in this day and age, we're concerned organizationally and just as an environmental community about the precedent of putting in new barriers in our local canyons. This is something that we've invested so much energy and money into sort of restoring these corridors. And these are backcountry areas. So all that said, we think it's time for the project to come to a conclusion. I haven't heard that there's any formal sort of process underway to extend the permits, but I have heard that there are maybe informal conversations happening behind the scenes about the possibility of extending and maybe even allowing some of the structures to become permanent. And we're concerned that might not be appropriate. So we submitted a letter along with several other groups. SBCAN was one of the groups that signed on, just to kind of convey these sentiments. And I suppose as things move forward, if and when there is any formal process or conversation about extending permits or making the some of the nets permanent. We do view, our role will be to inform community members, and when we do hope that if there are others here that are concerned, that share concerns, that people have an opportunity to express those. So that's kind of why I'm here today, is just to share this information. And we appreciate SBCAN weighing in as well.
So is there other action that you would hope individuals or groups would take right now, or you're just saying you've sent the letter and you hope to get further enlightenment?
At this point, I think that if you are concerned, it would be, it's important that particularly the Board of Supervisors hear those concerns. If folks want to email the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Williams District in particular, it'd be important to convey those sentiments. So I do think that could be helpful, but we are kind of in a holding pattern to wait and see, I think, how the eventual cleanup goes, and then if and when sort of formally the project, if there's a proposal to extend it or make those.
Okay, so
permanent.
McElroy, did you want to say something about this or respond to this?
Yeah, I would. And I want to thank Ben. Ben was the one that extended the invitation for me that the meeting was happening. And this is, I think we're kind of having a very collegial discussion. And this is not, to me, a zero-sum game. I understand why people oppose the idea of this. But I think that there's some value in what we've tried to do here. And so I could talk about this for 3 hours. I'm not gonna do that to you.
Thank you.
So what I would say is we have a website called it's tprcsb.org, and we have some films in there that kind of tell the story of how the project started. We have some people in the films that have been part of the project: Sarah Anderson from the Bren School, Larry Garola, the local geoengineer, Dave Rogers, and they did a fantastic report on the history of this phenomenon in Santa Barbara County. A little bit about my background: I was one of the commanders of the debris flow response. At the time, I was the fire chief for the city of Santa Barbara, and I was approached by a group of citizens post debris flow, and basically they were saying, what is it that we can do as citizens to explore some possible mitigations? And so we went through a dozen, 20 possible things, and landed finally on this with a company called GeoBrug from Switzerland, who just held their international debris flow conference here as a result of the net, the impact on the net in San Ysidro Canyon in January. So what I would encourage you to do is to take a look at take a look at the website, take a look at the history behind it. What I really want people to understand is we weren't necessarily a fly-by-night group of dilettantes that came in and did this. We have really good scientists. We have really good geologists. We have really great Store Environmental is our biologist. We have Waterways, our geomorphologist. Sandshed, Harry Rabin from On the Wave has been doing a lot of our drone work and film work. And right now we've just finished an analysis of the debris that is in the net in San Ysidro. And so we will know exactly what is in there from the LiDAR, rather than just looking at the net and going, well, I think that's what's behind there. So we've been analyzing what the impact of the debris was on that particular net. All 6 of the nets were impacted. We have 2 nets in Cold Springs, one in the West Fork, one in the East Fork, 2 in Ceres in the same part of San Ysidro Creek, one just above the old Edison Catway Road, and one about 200 yards below the waterfall, and then 2 in Buena Vista Canyon. And just for some background, they're all on private land that is inside, it's private land that is regulated by CDFW because of the presence of the creek. So for us to get a permit to install the nets, we not only had to get the county initial emergency permit, but accompanying that was the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, California Regional Water Quality Control Board, the Army Corps of Engineers. And so I think it's a testament to the work that went into the front end of this, that we are the only installation of this type in endangered species habitat in the United States of America. We're the only one. They're done all over the world, but we're the only one that has been installed in endangered species habitat. And when we started the project, we had a stakeholders meeting, which was we had Urban Creeks, we had CDFW, we had all the people in a room at Montecito Fire. And so we were able to address concerns. So one of the things was wildlife passage. So in other installations, the bottom of the nets conform to the contour of the creek. In our case, we lifted them so they had at least 5 feet. So we could so mammals could go up and down. The wildlife ability to traverse the areas was not worried about, because one of the first things we heard was, well, you're gill nets for mammals, which was my favorite one, that these animals are going to get trapped against the nets and die. We've got photographs of families of mountain lions going underneath the nets.
So I have to interrupt because we've got a lot on our agenda, and the stories are fascinating, and I'm realizing more and more we need to if it is a matter of concern, so we need to get informed. I think if you put in the chat the exact information about the website that you referenced, that would be very helpful for people, so they will know where to go to get more of that. But what would be your final couple of sentences? What would you like people to do?
I'd like people to take a look at what we've done on the webpage. I'd especially like them to look at the report of the history of landslides or debris flows and flooding in Santa Barbara County, because one of the things that happened, and this is it, Dick, and then I'm out of here. One of the things that happened right after the debris flow was there were some people in the community, and a particular academic from UCSB was saying, well, this isn't likely to happen again for 1,000 years, 500 years. Where we found 41 events in the last 200 years, and one happened again on the 5-year date of the anniversary. So take a look at the stuff. We've got a lot of information there, and you can reach out to me at any time. I'd like to continue the conversation, because we've run out of space to build debris basins. We got to get innovative. With climate change, the fire flood cycle is going to be increasing at a much more rapid rate than we've ever experienced. So that's it. I just wanted to show my face. And if anybody's got any questions, I'm around.
You can put questions in the chat, and if Pat doesn't, either Benjamin or Pat leave, we can send your questions to them.
And I'm going to also type in an email address for me as well too.
Very good. Thank you. So we are blessed with Kathy Finn has been able to get here. She had another meeting that was competing in time. Are you here, Kathy?
Yes, I am. Thank you for the invite, and glad to be here.
Well, and it was very short notice, so I'm very grateful that you were able to come. And what I wanted to let people know, if you don't mind, is that you not only are the new president of Local 770, but an alumnus of UCSB, which is a heartwarming continuation of this weird fact that Local 770 has been led by John Grant, who was one time student leader here at UCSB, and yourself, and in fact other staff people from UCSB have been active leaders in the local. And Local 770 has been a tremendously helpful partner to SBCAN and other groups here in our community. They've been partnering on political campaigns over these years. We cherish their role, and we've been trying to help as allies of the supermarket workers and the local. We worked hard. Nadia, SBCAN's organizer, worked hard to get the city council here to adopt a special hazard pay provision as Local 770 was working on. So now I thought it would be good for Kathy to introduce yourself to people, but and to talk about this merger of Albertson and Kroger, which isn't just a worker issue, although it is, but it's also a consumer issue, a community issue that we need to know more about. So take it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invite. And I'm really sorry I was late. We were having a director's meeting and the agenda was just more than we could handle in our time. So, and we just have so much going on. We had a big anti-merger rally yesterday, and I was getting a report about that. But so basically back in October, Ralph's, Kroger and Albertsons announced that they wanted to merge. I mean, Kroger is the largest, owner of grocery stores, traditional grocery stores, like not Walmarts and others that sell food, but traditional grocery store in the country. And Albertsons is the second largest owner of grocery stores. They're not really grocery companies. They're really, big Wall Street, multinational corporations that happen to own a lot of grocery chains. So the impact in Southern California is on Ralph's and Food for Less, which are owned by Kroger, and Vons and Pavilions, which are both owned by Albertsons. These are the last major traditional grocery chains that we have remaining. And historically, our experience has been, and we've lived through lots and lots and lots of mergers of this type. Most recently, the Vons and Albertsons merger. And every single time this has happened over the past, 40, 50, whatever years that we've experienced these mergers, there was, Lucky Albertsons merger, Hughes merged into Ralph's. Anyway, there's been so many, is that within a short period of time after the merger, many stores close because they don't want to, not only because they don't want to, but the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and because of antitrust laws, in some cases forces them to divest some stores, but they, don't want to have stores competing, where there's, if Ralph's and Albertsons are owned by the same company and there's two, as a Ralph's and an Albertsons across the street from each other, they often close one. So one example of that was in the Albertsons Vons merger. There was a Vons and an Albertsons across the street from each other in Carpinteria. And I think the Albertsons stayed open and the Vons closed. Maybe it was the other way around. And a similar thing happened recently in Lompoc, where there was only two grocery stores. There was an Albertsons and a Vons, and now there's one. So these mergers are not good for consumers. All the research that we've seen and that's been done over the years is that prices go up after a merger. Jobs, go down. It's also does not help in our ability to negotiate better wages, because when we're negotiating with multiple employers, it's easier for us to, have leverage, put pressure on, companies to give better wages. If we're only negotiating with one big company, it's going to be very difficult for us to ensure that people are getting adequate pay. So for the workers, it's bad, but for the consumers, it's bad. And for food producers, it's bad, because one of the reasons, even in their own documents, that they have said that they want to do this merger is to have better bargaining power with their suppliers, which means that they want to put downward pressure on prices of things that they buy from suppliers, which is not good for farm workers and food producers and others who sell their goods to Kroger and Albertsons. Anyway, that's somewhat of an overview. We have been working with the Federal Trade Commission. We've gone back to DC to testify in front of them several times. But in addition, we've been working with a lot of community groups. We have over 100 community groups that have signed on our website, which is, I think, called nogrocerymerger.com. But anyway, if you look up stop the Kroger merger, you'll find it. And our website has other actions that you can take to oppose the merger. It gives you a place you can write to the FTC. And community groups can, so if folks are in other parts of other community groups, SBCAN has already signed on, I believe. But if you know of any other community groups that want to sign on to oppose the merger, you're certainly welcome to do that. I'll leave it at that. And if people have questions, I would love to answer any questions people have, because that was kind of a lot of information, maybe.
What is the schedule for the FTC? So this requires FTC approval, right? And what does the timetable look like for that?
So that is also an excellent question. So when they first announced the merger, they said that they expected it would take at least a year for the FTC to review everything, which the FTC is really doing a lot of extensive research, and they're taking testimony from all kinds of people. So we expect to hear something at the very early parts of 2024. But we're also expecting that the FTC is going to not approve the merger. But we don't know for sure. But the thing is that even Kroger and Albertsons don't expect that they're going to approve it. And they've already come out publicly saying that if it's not approved, they will sue. So they can then go to court and file a lawsuit against the FTC to try to get an order that the FTC, approve the merger. The FTC then would, jurisdiction would go back to the FTC, and they would still potentially have to make some orders about store divestitures and things like that. So then that would tack on probably another year of time. And I don't know how long exactly the court battle takes, and then there could be appeals and things. So it could be very complicated. It could be very time consuming. So it may not happen, within the next year or so.
So the head of the FTC is maybe the most committed to antitrust aggressive policy that we've ever had in history, right?
Yeah, Lena Khan is her name, and she's been great. But also some courts have already overturned some of her some of the rulings of the FTC. One of the problems is that during the 4 years that Trump was president, he appointed a lot of district court judges, like thousands of district court judges. And so it's kind of a luck of the draw if you get a Trump appointed judge. Some of them are wacko, some of them are just very conservative and business oriented. So there's been several reversals already of FTC rulings under Lena Khan. So that's part of the scary part about what's going to happen, even if we're pretty confident that they're not going to approve this merger. And there are a lot of really excellent reasons why they shouldn't. I mean, if the FTC is, playing the role that the FTC was intended to play, which is to protect consumers from monopolies, there's no way this merger should be approved. But, we'll see what happens when it gets to court.
Yes. And so if we go to the website and sign up, are we then regularly going to be receiving updates on what to do and what the issues are, how it's going forward, right?
Yes. So you go on the website. We will be sending updates about what's happening. There hasn't been much, of late, only because the FTC is right now doing a lot of information gathering. There have been several rallies. We haven't had anything up in your area. We had a very big rally yesterday in Burbank. We had about 150 people, a lot of members, but also a lot of community came out to this rally we had yesterday at a Ralph's store in Burbank. But if we have something up in the Ventura, Santa Barbara area, we will definitely let you all know.
Did you say there were only 2 supermarkets in Lompoc, or
There were 2, traditional markets. There were
Yeah,
2 Indian
right,
markets,
right, yeah.
not that there were only 2, but there were 2 that we represented. We represented an Albertsons and a Vons,
right?
and one closed, I think, what, about a year ago or maybe 2 years ago.
I think we have a good supply of supermarkets in this town, but that means we're not aware of the fact that in other places, food deserts exist or can exist, and that's what I think you're saying. One of the outcomes of this merger would be to increase that likelihood, right?
Yes, and I mean, and that is what happens. And even this one, the closing of the store in Lompoc, the Albertsons, Vons, or the Albertsons Safeway, and Safeway was the owner of Vons, merger happened now, I don't know, 8 years ago, something like that. And over time, they've been closing stores. And of course, they had 2 stores in Lompoc. And so, ultimately they decided to close one. But that's happening, that's what happens when mergers happen. If you look at the 5 to 10 year period after, many of those stores end up closing, and the impact usually is most heavy on areas that are either already are food deserts or on verging on being food deserts. So I mean, if you look at LA, 30 years ago, there were so many grocery stores in South LA and South Central LA, and so many of them were gobbled up by mergers, and now they're all gone.
All gone, yeah. And that has so much consequence in just the nutrition of the people living there, and the quality of life. So if you could if you could do the chat and just put the website, or maybe you don't know it. So
No, I'll find it. It'll just take me a
okay,
second.
all right, that'll be good. Any other questions that would like to, or comments people would like to make before? I'm sure Kathy has to move on, but raise your hand if you want to say anything or raise that question. If I'd like you to meet Kathy, Declan Griffin, he's joined us. He's a new intern for Local 770 under the Labor Summer Program. And I told him that you would be speaking here. So he is here to meet you in that sense. So I think he's going to be a great asset for the local here, but we won't say anything about what he's going to do.
Thank you for the connection, Dick. I appreciate it. Hi,
All
Kathy.
Hi, Declan. I really look forward to meeting you in person. I'm sure that will happen very soon.
Me as well. Me as well. Looking forward.
Great. All right. Well, you can hang on here if you want to hear more about our local housing crisis and struggles around that, or we're very grateful that you could show up on this short notice. And we'd love to keep everything that you might need for community support. Please let SBCAN and others know what that is, and we'll be trying to work together. We have, I know 770 is interested in the housing issues locally, and we have a coalition that is building around that includes unions like 770. So
yeah, I'll stay on till I can only stay till 1 o'clock. At 1 o'clock, I've got to actually get on a call with our Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, which is going to be voting on giving strike sanction to the hotel and restaurant workers
Right.
whose contract expires today. So
we are really on the verge of a major labor upheaval right now, don't you think? We've got the Teamsters and
UPS.
We've got the Hollywood unions, and we've got the hotel unions, which I only recently became aware of. They may strike this weekend, right?
Their contract expires at midnight tonight, and Yeah, I actually last week went to a rally with them, and along with 250 other people, we all got arrested. We sat down, you might have seen this on the news, we sat down in the middle of Century Boulevard to protest, the treatment of hotel and restaurant workers. So anyway, I'll let you get back to your thing. I'm going to listen for 15 more minutes, and then I got to get on to the strike sanction meeting for HERE.
All right, well, we're giving you a Zoom applause. Thank you very much, Kathy, and good luck on your new role in leadership.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
So the housing situation in the area is bubbling on a number of fronts. And the situation of most urgent concern, I think, is the eviction story in Isla Vista. And Stanley Tsankoff is here. He is the one of the leading figures in the Santa Barbara Tenants Union. They've been working on this whole issue. And the county board supervisors have been trying to respond to this issue. Can you sort of bring us up to date on the whole story, Stanley?
Yes, thanks so much for carving out space. I put here in the chat, I don't know if housing's bubbling or boiling, but sometimes it feels like a little bit of both. As Dick mentioned, we've been, just very, very briefly, we've been in the midst of about 240 units, about 70 or 80 remaining families in Isla Vista in unincorporated Santa Barbara County. Folks have been in the crosshairs of a multi-billion-dollar flipper, developer, financial investment company called Core Spaces. And this, they bought these 4 apartment buildings for $91 million and immediately issued notices to vacate. They've spread misinformation to tenants about their rights. And the flip side to all of this pain, all of this anxiety and housing precarity is that with the support of so many of the folks in this room and many, many, many others, we gained a lot of momentum to advance tenant protections in the county. Early, about 2 months ago, we were able to kind of in record time ensure that any person who's going to evict anybody for renovations must pull their permits and plans before they, ever displace anybody, before they even give notices. That happened on an urgency notice. It came after, on the heels of kind of record numbers of people showing up in support and testifying. And what that did was, one, it helped level the playing field a little bit in favor of tenants for the long haul, but it also slowed down these evictions. What happened this last Tuesday was a second sort of necessary step that we see as protecting tenants, both those in Isla Vista who are in the crosshairs as well as others. On Tuesday, the Board of Supervisors on a 3-2 vote passed the first reading. We'll have to wait till July 11th for the second reading for it to formally go through, but they basically instituted 3 things. One, landlords now have to offer a 1-year lease to any tenant who's been in their home for more than a year. It's kind of the best practice in a lot of municipalities, but we were missing that. 2, it limits any sort of renovation-based evictions to only those in which the primary purpose is a safety or habitability concern as defined by the county. This is huge because the devastating trend that we're seeing nationally and certainly in our region where the housing market is so harmful is that developers are just slapping on a coat of paint, so to speak, sometimes quite literally, and then claiming that they need to displace tenants just to deregulate the rent. So if there's more of a burden on actually necessary reasons for the safety and habitability of tenants, if you actually have to prove that puts a stop to these cosmetic or elective changes. And finally, what this ordinance would do is it would require that tenants who are displaced on a substantial renovation get the right of first refusal to come back to their unit. Now, this is huge, right? I mean, it in some ways it gives you a sense of peace, right? Even though you're being displaced. But on the flip side, the policy just simply doesn't go far enough because there's no cap on the rents that you could come back to, right? And so if we're talking about keeping tenants in their homes, and of course, the trend is that it's typically the most working class. It's folks on Section 8. It's oftentimes Spanish monolingual folks with disabilities who are, in the units that are most targeted by these types of renovictions. If we're talking about keeping people in their homes and also protecting the remotely affordable housing stock we have in the region, we need to actually put some really common sense caps on the rent increases. So there's a lot of celebration to be had in terms of actually getting to this point, and we need to press the County Board of Supervisors to amend this ordinance or to pass another ordinance to actually cap the rent at which folks come back to. And then I just want to mention that no presentation in this space would be good without a very tangible call to action. So I want to just offer, if folks are interested in supporting with this, feel free to maybe put your email down in the chat if we're not already connected. We could use your help to urge the county supervisors to do this. And then second, we need to make sure that all municipalities are catching up with the times to protect tenants, because it's a little bit of like a game of whack-a-mole, right? And, the city of Goleta, the city of Santa Barbara, we have, all of the cities that are not affected by this ordinance. And so if anybody is at all interested in kind of learning what we've been learning, right, in terms of like the best practices, the best policies, or learning from our mistakes, and you feel really strongly about helping pass something in your municipality, I would absolutely love to talk with you. And thanks so much, Kathy and Sarah, for dropping your emails in.
So
And
thank
so
you.
I want to
Yeah.
put a pause there and not ramble too long, but here for
Right, well-
questions if there's
Well,
any.
let me just highlight a couple of points here. You alluded to this. It's really important in this case to know that you said something like 70 of the households in this complex are not students. They are actually Section 8 and other lower income, working class people with children, like Spanish speaking people, senior citizens, and
That's right.
people with health issues. They can't be relocated. And there was a member of the county board who says, well, we're requiring a lot of relocation money for people. And he just ignored the fact that these people, that money is not going to help them go anywhere.
Right.
And so that's one point. Second, this is a very dramatic example, but it's not an isolated case. And it was raised at the county board meeting that in Summerlin, there's an effort to evict multiple families from a rental housing complex to convert it into short-term rentals.
It's the largest, I believe, the largest multifamily unit building actually in Summerland. Not that Summerland's huge, but it's significant.
So these are example. I mean, the cold calculation of these investor operations is scary. They don't necessarily even know who's living there when they barge in, buy these places, and try to do a different business model. And they are undermining the existing supply of relatively affordable rental units in this region. So there's a lot of urgency here, but as you said, the testimony of some of those tenants before the county board was profound. It really had a big impact, even on the Republicans on the board who voted the wrong way on this. They had to admit that they were very moved by what was being said by some of the tenants who testified.
And I'll actually drop a link to the timestamp where folks started giving testimony on Tuesday. If you have even just a few minutes, take a listen. I mean, really, folks are, especially from the tenants who actually live there, who carved out time to be there.
So
Oh, Dick,
Dick, you
you
muted.
muted yourself.
there's other things the county can do besides simply these ordinances to protect the tenants. And one thought, which I'm hoping we can build on, is the housing authority could be able to partner with these private owners and take over the management of a certain percentage of the units to protect the affordability of the of a certain number of those units. That's just an example of, but it's, I think, a prime example. The housing authority, both on the county and the city, are ready for that kind of intervention, and how to bring that about, I have no idea, but we've put that idea in front of the county supervisor. So remember that Laura Capps is the newly elected supervisor representing the university area, the Isla Vista, and she and her staff are activated. Das Williams grew up in Isla Vista. He has a deep, long-term personal connection there, and he's chair of the county board. He and his staff been working on these things, but they need to hear from people. Don't rest on any laurels here about moving forward with these protections and with policies that will prevent this kind of stuff from happening. If
Dick,
yeah,
if I could just have one more minute, I wanted to share kind of one more next step that just to catch people up to speed.
okay,
So one of the sort of next steps as we wait on the lobbying and advocacy part of it is we are noticing as we're going door to door to work with tenants to fight for their rights, is that, of course, it's a tale as old as time. Folks are also experiencing a number of other material needs, and as the tenants union, we're not equipped to handle it. So issues of navigating the criminal justice system, or the so-called safety net, or child custody battles, whatever it is, and we're noticing that we could really use some help when it comes to maybe partnering with something like social work, or an organization that would go door to door with us maybe. So if you have any ideas, just going to put that out there as a need that we have. It's a specific need, but we're trying to wrap our heads around that. And then also, the Core Spaces has repeatedly refused to negotiate collectively with tenants. They keep promising to work with individuals to offer them some sort of new place to live, and yet have not offered anybody anything. And so the tenants, I believe today, will be reiterating their request for Core Spaces to actually come to the bargaining table in good faith and bargain collectively, and also show us their plans. They haven't shared what they're planning on doing with these units. And respectfully, since it's affecting so many people, we need to see the plan. So that's kind of what's on the horizon for us in terms of demands from the tenants.
I like the word respectfully, but I'm not sure it's deserved.
Yeah,
but in any case,
it usually precedes a whole lot of other words that come out of my mouth.
So we usually go to 1:30, so we have more time for additional reports. And Kathy, while Kathy Finn is here, I'd like to hear from. We have Benjamin Peterson is in Monique Limon's office, and there's a bill that Monique is sponsoring that we wanted to get an update about. And Ethan Bertrand's here from Greg Hart's office, so maybe he might have anything to add about housing issues that are on the legislative level, and I think that would be of interest to 770 as well. So go take it, Benjamin.
Yes, hi, Benjamin Peterson with Senator Monique Limon. The senator authored SB 584 this year, which was a labor force housing bill. And, you know, the purpose of this bill was both to create more affordable housing, especially as we respond to the needs of local governments. After redevelopment, funding was taken away for affordable housing. So there was that need to build affordable housing, to have the financing to do it, and also to create good paying jobs in the process, union jobs. And so that's why we proposed an assessment on short-term rentals that would be collected by the state, but distributed back to cities and counties proportional to what was collected in those jurisdictions. I think that after hearing from a wide variety of stakeholders, we've decided to hold the bill for a year and work on the policy a little bit. Concerns were raised from different quarters, including cities and counties, about how to collect the funding, and from some of the housing advocates as well about labor requirements. So our gist is that we are going to be working on this bill in the upcoming months into next year. The bill will stay where it is. It's in the Assembly Housing Committee. It passed through the Senate and passed the Senate floor, and hopefully find some resolutions to the issues that we heard from. And we heard from thousands of folks across the state. The next time this bill will be eligible for a hearing will be around this time next year, after House of Origin deadline.
What's the number of the bill?
SB 584, Senate Bill 584.
So, and, you know, I think people, since Monique is our esteemed state senator, this is a community that both needs this to happen, and we ought to be in the forefront of trying to work to make this work. This is a different approach from what the legislature's been able to do up to now, which has been mostly to try to incentivize private developers to build more housing on the supply-demand argument that if more housing will lower the price. None of that is working that well. And the other fascinating thing about this bill is the partnership Monique has had with the construction unions to make the bill very strong language about labor standards within the bill. And the fact that the construction unions now are interested not in partnering with developers, but in this kind of nonprofit. This is a bill that would support nonprofit development of housing, not private development. So I consider all this very innovative, but it's going to be a struggle and a longer road to get it moving, and including, you know, what kind of revenue raising will concretely be in the bill. Taxing the short-term rental may be a great idea. It's going to get a lot of opposition from short-term rental operators, and you know, so that's that story. I don't know whether either you or Ethan have other bills you are focusing on that you want us to know about.
I think that one, if I might add, one key piece is that, you know, the legislature has invested billions of dollars into affordable housing, kind of one-time funding over the past 4 years. But what this really recreates is a permanent stream of funding that we haven't seen since redevelopment, and that's key. That's it for me.
Great, thank you, Benjamin. Ethan, you have anything to add?
Yes, thanks. Specifically to housing, there are a few bills I'll highlight. Greg was pleased to vote in support of Assembly Bill 12 by Matt Haney, which limits the dollar amount of security deposit to 1 month's rent, whether it's a furnished or unfurnished apartment. As you all know, security deposits can be huge barriers for tenants seeking housing, especially in our community. Assemblymember Hart also voted in support of Assembly Bill 1657. This is the Affordable Housing Bond Act of 2024. It'll place a $10 billion housing bond on the March 5th, 2024 primary ballot to fund production of affordable housing and supportive housing throughout California. Additionally, we are monitoring Senator Durazo's Homelessness Prevention Act, which is going through the Assembly right now. Assemblymember Hart is not on any committees that will consider that bill, but he is monitoring it for if and when it gets to Assembly for full vote. Lastly, I'll mention one of our bills, which is Assembly Bill. Sorry, I lost the number. Assembly Bill 1345, Consumer Protections for Homeowners. This is a bill that we have put forward in partnership with Attorney General Bonta to protect vulnerable homeowners against deceptive real estate lending agreements that are used to trap homeowners in decades-long contracts that can lead to irrevocable liens on their homes. That's one bill we've been pleased to bring forward to protect consumers and homeowners from these deceptive real estate tactics. So that's kind of it on the housing side, and appreciate the opportunity to report out.
Well, we appreciate you doing it, and I didn't know about any of those, so this is great information. I hope we're drowning you all in information. That's the purpose we have. But put everything in the chat that you just said, Ethan, if that's possible, at least summarize it.
Yeah, sure.
These are bills in the hopper, right? I assume bills that need public support or would benefit from public support, right? Yeah,
that's right.
So let us know about that in the chat. And I'm rushing along because there's a third piece to this, which is what developments in the city of Santa Barbara. And Kristen Sen has happily joined us. She's been very much engaged in a lot of these issues, but particularly in the following, which is that the council, and I think Kristen, you might have been one of the sponsors of this measure, voted unanimously to create a affordable housing trust fund. They allocated $3 million, close to $3 million to that purpose from the surplus that showed up in the general fund budget, general fund of the city. So that was a historic measure. It's a way of providing funding leverage for the Housing Authority and other nonprofits to build affordable housing in the community. So the council turned the issue over to the ordinance committee, which Kristen is a member of, and the staff of the city was to prepare a draft ordinance to implement this fund. And to be very blunt about it, what they presented to the ordinance committee was not what the council had voted to adopt in many ways. And that led to a certain amount of both distress, but lobbying and concern. And so that yesterday, this Tuesday, just Wednesday, there was a so-called workshop with the ordinance committee and members from the community. A lot of our housing advocate folks and groups were there. The staff presented a new version of the ordinance, which was much more in line with what we and the council members had advocated, but there's still some gaps that were pointed out eloquently at this meeting. So Kristen, it's great that you're here. Maybe you'd like to say what you think is going on here and what the promise or what the need is for further public engagement.
Sure, Dick, thank you. I wasn't really planning on speaking, but I will say that you were a powerful advocate, and many people who came and really highlighting the trust fund, and it had pretty quickly moved away, or I don't think it was ever truly considered as a trust fund. And to our city attorney's credit, I think Sarah Connect, she asked that we take time to really look at it as a trust fund. And that's the way it's worded in our housing element draft. That's other cities do that. That has a certain understanding of what that means. And we were being pretty creatively diverging from that initial charge. And I think it's about 3.6 million. So the thing that we'll be looking for is a dedicated funding stream. And that was in the original motion, that was part of what was being proposed, but something that can be used by Housing Authority or other nonprofits, Habitat for Humanity, People Self-Help, others that can use it to leverage funding to get more affordable projects done. And then there's also a component that's for right to counsel to
Right,
help.
and that was an important step,
Yeah.
which we thought would would require a lot more pressure, but was passed easily by the council. $250,000 set aside for guaranteeing some kind of right to counsel or support for counsel for tenants facing eviction or other problems with their landlord. This is a step that's happening in a number of communities. It's important for tenant protection. There's no way to win an eviction suit if you don't have legal representation, and most people don't have it when they're facing this. So the revenue stream piece, what I should have emphasized is that the housing authority in our city, which if you don't realize it, is a jewel of our community. It's a major institution nationally recognized for its creativity in terms of the housing quality that is created, and because of their ability to create that housing given very scarce resources. They are the prime experts and movers in guiding what kind of permanent trust fund would be established. And they're also in the lead of the development of a permanent revenue stream kind of measure, and a coalition of groups that include a number of unions, including 770. All the organizations sitting here are represented. It's an economic justice roundtable. It's been in existence on and off for a number of years. We are, as a roundtable or as a coalition, ready to support a ballot initiative for raising revenue for affordable housing in the city for the 2024 ballot. How that will, the Housing Authority is about to hire a consultant to help formulate that campaign. It could be something that the council itself will endorse or put on the ballot, or it could be an independent grassroots effort. There are different strategic reasons why one might be better than the other. I think the council majority, or maybe unanimously, wants to see that permanent revenue fund created, and so how this works out will be important. The idea that the Housing Authority suggested is that there be a increase in the hotel tax, the so-called TOT bed tax. It's now 12% tax on people who are who on each hotel bill. Many cities charge 15%. So if we raise it to 15%, we will have from that enough revenue to support the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, plus some further money for the city, if that were to be passed. That's at least what Rob Fredericks of the Housing Authority estimates. So that's the update, and I wanted people to really foreground this last point. There's going to be a ballot initiative. It's a tax measure that has to be voted on by the people. If it's put on by the council, it might require a 2/3 vote, but this will be a popular tax if it's a hotel tax, because the people who vote for it won't have to pay it. And that's the best kind of tax measure to ask people to support. Of course, the hotel industry will go all out to defeat it. And this might be quite a battle, at least in the public media in the coming months. So that's the report. But what people should have questions, and we'd love to open the floor for that about what is happening in any of the fronts. We've got all these people here who are leading these battles, and if you've got any comments or questions, that would be great.
Can I add just a comment really quick before?
Absolutely.
And I'll just listen. But there, in talking about ballot initiatives, there are different ways to look at it too, and just there's clearly like a nexus with TOT and the need for housing, but the potential of the earning on that or the fund on that isn't as high as, say, an increase in sales tax. And this is something worth looking at, and something in a sales tax could be something like Measure B, where there's a sales tax and then a certain amount is allocated for housing authority, or for that funding stream for the affordable housing. And I'm not advocating for one or the other, but that's all part of the discussion. And my hope would be that there wouldn't be competing ballot measures between housing advocates and the city, and I think there's much more powerful if we can come together and collaborate. And that's certainly my hope and direction, that it would be all together. And I think we're heading towards that, but there's a lot still to work out about sales tax, TOT, how much, what percentage. And I think we're all agreed that if it just goes to general fund, it wouldn't be protected. So I think it's really important to have it be earmarked and allocated. And
that's why one of the reasons that you and we advocated for this, calling this a trust fund, because that separates that money from the general fund. And people are being asked to vote for a tax increase for affordable housing. Having that money flow into a trust fund is a way of guaranteeing to people that the tax money they're supporting actually goes in the way that they hope for. And not only that, a trust fund can receive private donations, and that's another benefit for having it organized that way. And other cities are creating trust funds along this line. There's plenty of other examples in California of efforts along this line. Thank you for that. And by the way, maybe do you know what the current sales tax, how it compares with other cities, and what
it's
that
low.
represent?
Low.
No, it's low. Okay. So I know the staff obviously is concerned about the budget and raising additional money, maybe through a sales tax. We don't want these measures competing. And the term community partners was used by the city staff at this meeting on Wednesday. I liked hearing that, rather than that there'll be conflict, because conflict was certainly bubbling up because of what had so far transpired. Thank you, Kristen, by the way, for saying all that. Any other questions? I'm sure you're completely drowning now, but that's what we do here monthly. I mean, I don't know about you, but since I'm the organizer, it's a little self-serving, but I think this was a very informative meeting, to say the least, about stuff, none of which has been in the media. So you're getting a lot of news. I wish it were in the media. But that brings me to the point that Lisa Osborne, we didn't introduce you, Lisa, but I think you're here. She's the news director of KCSB, and they would love to use clips from this kind of session on the air. So that will be a good thing if that can be worked on. Any other announcements or comments before we break? I didn't think we'd be able to have enough time for what we did, but this has been good, and we hope that those who are here for the first time, we'll plan future to be on our regular list and to come back, because those who are fans of this think it's a good institution to keep your eyes on. Any other announcements for things?
Can I just add, Lawanda?
Absolutely.
Very great meeting. Thank you all. You all gave me what I need for my legislative report for the Democratic Club, the NAACP, and the League of Women Voters. So thank you very much.
Well, I just wanted to add, if folks aren't members of SBCAN also, I encourage you to do that. It helps keep the work going.
Right. And thank you for Nadia. I don't know, for helping. She's our events organizer for SBCAN, and you may not do another one, but maybe you will. We're trying to entice, I am anyway, Nadia into keeping a relationship with what we're doing, even as she moves on to creative pursuits, which we encourage people, especially young people, to do. So anyway, it's the July 4th weekend coming up. So if there are no other...
Hi, I have an announcement. I'm Sarah McDonald. You guys know me, but last week I just got back from a week ago from the Moral Poverty Action Congress of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. And if you are in Washington, D.C., and I visited our legislators, so here's the deal. I have some new national and state fact sheets, and if you would like them, please put your email in the chat, because they're up to date. They're from 2023. And I will also include in this package, not for a song, but the new reintroduced third Reconstruction resolution, as reintroduced by Pramila Jayapal and I keep wanting to call her Senator Barbara Lee, but Congressperson Barbara Lee. And so it was reintroduced while we were in DC last week. So please put it in, and because there's lots of work that we are called to do. And I got a heavy hitter email from Rev Barber this morning. So we're asking for your help, and if you would like to have more information about the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, I'm happy to have you join us in our Central Coast region. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and your dedication and your emphasis on the moral with Reverend Barber. This is really more than helpful. It's inspiring. And the thing about the chat, that's one of the benefits of being at these roundtables, because the chat is filled with information, as you see, and I hope you guys know how to save it. I sometimes forget myself to save it, so I'm making that as a reminder. And once you save it, it'll be on your computer and you can make use of it. Any other announcements before we send you on your holiday way?
Cause Action Fund, the grassroots electoral power building side of Cause's work, which we work on environmental justice, tenants' rights, farm worker, building immigrant power. We will be having a North County reception on August 19th at Blosser Urban Garden in Santa Maria, and would love to have you join us. I put more info in the chat.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And we like to be bugged, don't we?
What?
Sarah.
Blosser Urban Garden, bug.
That's right.
We don't mean to bug you, but this is a bug.
It's a moral bug, though, which is the best kind of bug. Anyone else? There's someone here I don't know. Do you want to introduce everyone else? Introduce themselves, but you came on a little late. Aljolie Linville, are you there? I don't know. All right, not to prolong things too much. Save the chat and have a good holiday, everybody. Take care of yourselves, please.
Take care, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate y'all.
Bye.